All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ann Sibley and I'm a research consultant here at the World Bank. Today is our first session in a series of 5 panels that we're going to be offering over the next 2 weeks as part of this symposium on cooperative financial institutions in rural development. If you're interested in checking out our other sessions, we've got a link here on the screen where you can go to our website and register for the sessions and learn a little bit more. We'll also put a live link in the chat box here in just a moment. A few housekeeping items before we begin. We are offering simultaneous translation for this session, so you can click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and select your preferred language of English, Spanish, or French. We're also offering a Q&A option for the session. If you would like to ask any questions of the moderator or the panelists, your microphone is muted, but this is a way that you can participate. You're welcome to enter in a question at any time, and we'll be reviewing these towards the end of the event. And finally, the session is being recorded, and we will share out recordings when the symposium is complete. And with that, I'll turn it over to Panos Varanges, who is leading the session. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. The first session of this panel is around the contribution of cooperative financial institutions in the rural financial inclusion. My name is Panos Varanges, and I will be your moderator. The agenda is that I will give a very short presentation as a background, and then I will introduce the panelists. Then we will follow with a panel discussion, and then we will move to a discussions with the audience. On the rural financial inclusion is an important part. When we look at the data, the rural financial inclusion, meaning people that they have loans and accounts with financial institutions, formal financial institutions, is well below the overall financial inclusion in a country, meaning the rural areas have less access to financial services and products compared to the overall economy. This is something to be expected because of the issues and the challenges that financial institutions face in serving rural areas, meaning the distances, the high level of informality, they create a number of problems. The access to finance from formal financial institutions is quite important because people want to borrow in order to grow their income. They need to smooth their income. They need to save. And informal financial institutions can provide some help, or informal channels through family, the local money lenders can do fill a gap, but often come at a higher cost, and they don't solve the long-term constraints that keep the rural people from having access to financial services. There are several types of financial institutions that operate in rural areas. We start from commercial banks to microfinance institutions to cooperatives to state development banks. Now we have, of course, the fintechs. And of course, there is no one size fits all. All of the financial institutions are needed because there are the heterogeneity of the rural population requires many types of financial institutions to operate. So far, a lot of attention has been done on commercial banks and microfinance, and relatively less on the cooperative financial institutions, who are gaining a renewed attention due to their unique features. The unique features are summarized in 3 categories. One is the member value, that they are owned by the members. So they provide a lot of services to their members, even in hard times. The ownership also creates some advantages, but also some challenges in terms of management and governance of these financial institutions. Then we have the client proximity. These cooperative financial institutions are very close to their clients, which are, of course, their members also, so they can better understand their needs. They can better evaluate the products that they need. they can better assess the credit risk. And then they are embedded into the community, and usually they have a double bottom line. It's not only there to be financially sustainable, but also to have an impact in the communities that they operate. The objectives of this panel is first to investigate the role of cooperative financial institutions in promoting rural financial inclusions in the 3 countries that we will be talking about. Then we want to understand what drives the different structures of these cooperative financial institutions. We want to explore the drivers for transformation of the cooperative financial institutions and the challenges that they face during this process. We want to look into the vision going forward. And finally, we want to look at the role of new technologies and other innovations that will make the cooperative financial institutions more agile and provide better services to the rural people. We'll examine the above issues through the lens of 3 different types of cooperative financial institution organization. One is a more highly integration structure. The second one is a mixed size of apex organizations. And the third is the many small entities in the group. So the first one, the high integration, is in our panel is represented by Albania. The second one, the mixed size and apex organization, is represented by Colombia. And the many small entities model is represented by the Ethiopia. So let me move to our panelists. To have 3 panelists that they represent these 3 financial types of cooperative financial structures. The first panelist is Zana Konini. She's the chairwoman of FedInvest in Albania. The second panelist is Berhan Kidanu. He's the project team leader at the Agricultural Transformation Agency in Ethiopia. And the third panelist is Enrique Valderrama. He's the executive president of FECOLFIN in Colombia. We are going to move now to the panel discussion. The panel discussion has the following format. There are 2 rounds of questions to the panelists. Each of the panelists will be asked a first question. And then when we first finish the first round, we will move to the second question for each of the panelists. At the end, then we will open it up to discussions with the audience. So we will move to the first panelist, to Ms. Zana Konini, from the chairwoman of FedInvest in Albania. Welcome, Zana. It was very nice having you in the panel. My first question to you is that your organization has gone through a major transformation in 2016 by merging all the financial cooperatives that they were affiliated to your federation into one. What were the reasons that drove this large merger? And what were the challenges that you face in such a transformation? What has been the impact of the merger on FedInvest capacity to deliver financial services in rural areas? I know it's a long question, but you have 5-6 minutes to answer it.
Okay. Thank you, Panos. I am really honored to be part of this symposium. As you said, I am chairwoman of FedInvest, and we started since 1992, and I was glad to see this our organization change from the birth until today. We started too small. Panos, we can show the slides or not?
Let me see.
It's up to you.
Yeah. We can slow the slides 1 second.
We started too small in 1992 as a World Bank project to relieve poverty in rural areas right after the collapse of communist regime. The farmers were extremely poor. They had no knowledge for market economy and no lending tradition. They depended a lot of humanitarian nets. State structure were very weak and lack of laws for the new economic system. Our project, slide 3, next slide, please. Our project was focused on financial support and creation of business skills. At the starting moment, we were informal and adapted our business strategy according to the situation, choosing local community leaders as social collateral for our credit activity. It was a success. So the financial cooperative model seemed to be the right path to follow. With TA from the World Bank, the first legal framework was drafted and approved. The union was designed as an umbrella organization. Over the years, we continued to serve our members and become a unique organization. We were always there for our members in good and bad times. Nevertheless, after some years, while activity increased greatly, the union had to cope with new challenges as lack of economy of scale, limited product offers, modest profitability, and difficulty to make new investment. Next slide, please. Members considered ACAs as their own organization, but their needs were more than just microloans and savings when it came to SMEs, payment, current accounts, remittances. In addition, in the new law for ACAs and deposit insurance, increased the request on ACAs for technology, MIS, staff skills, financial sustainability, etc. This was a moment of a deep reflection, which was combined with the establishment of a very professional partnership with RIAS Rabobank. The conclusion, the case for change was crucial, but we had to conserve our DNA of the existing organization, the cooperative principles with objective of change to achieve economy of scale. Within a record time, organized all local SCA assembly with the vision to set up a new institution. They decided to consolidate their assets, liability, and capital. Member of ACAs became member of the consolidated institution. The new institution was named FedInvest. Next slide, please. Consolidation was a win-win situation from all stakeholders' perspective, for the members, elected people, staff, regulators, farmers, and also for Albania. Next slide. Since consolidation, we have improved our corporate governance framework, transformed our IT technology, developed agri and SME sector, received a payment license from Bank of Albania, introduced digital channels, improved our risk management and financial reporting. FedInvest membership has been doubled, female members more than tripled, deposit portfolio increased by nearly 70%, loans by 55%, profitability and capital ratios have improved, and all while staying true to the social mission of FedInvest. Our conclusion, we cannot maximize the value to our members and impact to community without reaching a sustainable growth. That means solid capital base, strong efficiency and profitability by using smart technology. Shortly for the question.
Yes, thank you very much, Zana, and you were perfect on time. Thank you very much for keeping to the time, and actually very complete answer. Quite impressive transformation and quite impressive results following this transformation. Congratulations, I think you have achieved quite a lot. We are moving now to the next panelist, which is Berhan Kidane from ATA in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian model is quite different in the sense that it's quite decentralized model. So my question to you, Berhan, is that Given the cooperative model that is more decentralized compared to what we heard from Albania, what are the main reasons that led to this model for Ethiopia? And what do you see are the main challenges of the rural cooperative financial institutions that they face in Ethiopia?
Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I think the main problem begins from the approach adopted by the government. That approach was one village, one SACCO approach. Would have around 17,000 villages in this country. But if you see the number of SACCOs is cities that's around 22, 23,000. This shows you the rate. There are 2 SACCOs even in a village. So you can see how this is highly disintegrated and the degree of fragmentation is very high. So would have a 3-tier structure. The cooperative promotion agency, that's federal cooperative agency, brings 3-tier structure. But the 3-tier structure doesn't focus on the differentiated roles and tasks or activities of these structures. They didn't give value, on the service delivery, on the efficiency and the availability of the SACCOs, rather simply on setting up the different structures at different levels. And in some circumstances, you see they follow the political boundary instead of the economic viability and the competitiveness of the SACCOs. So you see no standardized operations, so highly fragmented, so with poor service and poor performance of these SACCOs. I think the background starts from here, from the upwards that the state follows on developing, on promoting these SACCOs. As regards to the challenges and problems, I think ATA with FCA, I think with the consultants of Rabobank, we have tried to identify 3 structural deficiencies. That is the operational and the liquidity gap. So the system, the SACCOs in Ethiopia, they follow the closed system. In a closed system, you can generate enough capital for loan. So they should have to search for outside sources to solve the liquidity problems. And the other is the operational and efficiency gaps of SACCOs. You see that SACCOs are fragmented, so they cannot leverage the economies of scale. So they are not, it's difficult for professionalization and automation. And the other is the competitive disadvantage in mobilizing savings. Since the banks are moving, with this mobile technology to the rural areas, I think the SACCOs, cannot compete with this banks at this time. These are the structural deficiencies. I think beyond that, I think ATA has also identified that I have mentioned that the duplication of efforts among different structures, especially currently among the primary and secondary societies, poor governance, lack of infrastructure and qualified personnel, no standard processes, inefficient operations, poor bookkeeping and recording, and limited products and services, mainly to saving and loan products. And the saving and loan products have also limited services in. And at the same time, weak supervision and regulation from the regulator side. These are, some of the key challenges that the SACCOs of Ethiopia are facing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Berhane. It shows in a different model, more decentralized, what have been the challenges, in which I would say they are significant, but glad to hear that there are some efforts by ATA address these challenges. Then I'm going now to the third panelist, Mr. Valderrama, Enrique Valderrama for FECOLFIN Colombia. Estimado Enrique, buen día. Es un placer.
Dear Enrique, good morning. It's a pleasure to have you here in our panel. And the first question is, what is the importance of financial cooperatives as promoters of rural financial integration in Colombia? And what are the challenges of these CFI to offer more financial products in rural areas? Good morning to all of you. I would like to thank the organizers of this event. And if I may, I would like to tell you that Colombia is a very extensive country. It has more than 1,100,000 kilometers of length, which makes it very complex to offer services in all its areas. It has 36,400,000 inhabitants. These are two basic statistics. Now, going to your question, the truth is financial cooperatives have a structure that allows them to face any type of challenge and make progress, make headway in the area of financial cooperatives. There are 1,200 contact points at national level, and they are in the main towns. We have several highly developed cities, and the rest are medium-sized and smaller-sized cities and towns. And these towns are served by the cooperatives. They go where the traditional banking institutions do not go. They reach the most difficult places to reach in the Colombian orography. We have, in Colombia, we say that people are captured by daytime lenders. And the cooperatives go to these places, they organize the communities, and they standardize the services so that they do not have to go to day lenders. They are democratic and participatory. So these persons, even though they might be farmers, they have the same rights as the rest of the citizens of the country when it comes to services from cooperatives. And this is one of our principles. You know that Colombia is a country that has been in a constant state of revolution. We have had the presence of armed actors at all times. And whenever there has been a crisis, cooperatives have been present. Let me tell you very quickly that when we had armed conflicts in our country, other banking institutions have left quickly whenever there is a grave development in our country. And cooperatives have been left as the sole financial institution for small towns and medium-sized cities. We have a challenge in this area because the government has said that the agricultural sector is one of the motors for development. So we are trying to diversify in Colombia. We're trying to not depend as much on oil. And this is one of the other axes that we are developing in our country. The cooperatives have to establish a series of rural inclusion services together with the government. And this is even worse in the era of the pandemic, because at that time, the cooperatives did not have regulations to go down to the small and medium enterprises because legislation did not allow it if they did not have legal personality. But we know that we can't reach the rural areas in that way, but we have to educate people financially, and people have to be able to solve their own problems, but we need to have a partnership with other associations, and the SACOs do a field work, but we do not do it with a partnership with other associations in order to leverage economic resources. We have to go above and beyond the problems of armed conflict in our country, and we need to provide technical assistance for the access and use of financial products and loan products by people in the field. We are ready to do so, and we have been doing this in Colombia. Cooperatives are in the cities and in the main towns of the municipalities, but in the cities, we have industry, trade, and services, whereas in the municipalities, we only have the rural activities. So these cooperatives have expertise and capabilities that they can lend to microfinances. And of course, the microfinancial institutions have been present in the field, and they have been helping the rural sector for a long time. Thank you very much, Enrique. The role of financial cooperatives in Colombia is very interesting. They have a very important role to play for financial inclusion in the rural areas of your country. So thank you very much for telling us this story.
For Zana. Zana, what are the key drivers going forward? What is the vision after the consolidation of the cooperative structure? And what is in the future? What do you see in the future as a strategy to grow? And if you can also speak about some of the activities like the adoption of digital technologies, the product diversification, the financial education that we heard is very important from Colombia in expanding the financial services in the rural areas.
Going forward, our main pillars are strengthening financial inclusion in rural areas, consolidating FedInvest financial sustainability, adopting customer centricity approach, and launching innovative, cost-effective financial and non-financial products and services to our membership. Financial inclusion. Also, Albania has achieved good progress over the past decade in financial inclusion. There are still some big challenges to overcome, especially when it comes to financial inclusion in the rural areas. A large part of payments are still cash-based, and only 38% of population has a bank account. Agriculture sector and rural economy in general are underserved by financial institutions, especially on the lending side. Only 3% of financing goes for agriculture sector, which contribute with over 24% of Albania's GDP. But in the same time, we had to, FedInvest is always aiming to improve its drives of growth, diversify the sources of income, strengthen its capital base, manage, monitor and control risk, and increase sustainability while competing with other financial institutions. Our growth will be driven by launching additional financial services, and utilizing multiple digital channels. The current pandemic has accelerated the digital transformation process for FedInvest, prompting the use of digital tools for credit delivery, internal operation, payment solution, and external communication with members. As an integral part of FedInvest's strategic objective, we have introduced a range of new financial and non-financial services for our membership, among which utility payment services, starting with electricity payment, adding also other utility providers. Rural areas with no other practical options will be the primary beneficiaries of these services. Internet banking service, FedOnline, part of Oracle digital banking experience, permitting real-time payments between members. Next slide, please. We launched an interactive agriculture business assistance online platform, ABA, with a respective application for all smartphones, with a wide range of non-financial services available to all Albanian farmers, not only for our members. Digital Window Initiative, where we provide digital experience, digital knowledge, and financial education to our members through a specific area in the branch. Several financial education modules have been developed as leaflets and electronics collection, available in digital channels, ABA Online, social media, and website. Recently, we are testing an online loan application product via our online channels. A new agreement has been reached with FinTech to launch QR payments by next year, which will target both rural and urban areas. Next slide, please. Some of key challenges for FedInvest are growing in all client segments, including SMEs, building more complex value chain products, offering digital cost-effective payments, increasing staff productivity, reducing operational risk linked with payment and digital transaction, consolidating financial position, and institutional sustainability. Next. Our optimism is based in our expertise, motivation, the excellent strategic partnership, usage of multi-channels, increasing staff productivity, creating synergy between ABA Center and FedInvest, expanding CRM techniques. Thank you. Shortly.
Thank you very much, Zana, for this very comprehensive view, and particularly very worthwhile pointing out to the push for new technologies and use of digital channels as a mean to expand services. That's very interesting. Next, I'm going back to Berhane. Berhane, you mentioned a lot of challenges in answering the first question. What are the projects that are undergoing in Ethiopia that will strengthen the governance, the management, and the customer service of the SACCOs in Ethiopia? What projects do you have? And in particularly, if you can elaborate on the challenges of dealing with more than 21,000 SACCOs, 80% of which are very small, below 70 members.
Okay, thank you. I think with this complex challenge, we come with a vision on how to avert these problems. I think with the clear and demarcated roles of the primaries and the unions, to have the robust financial institution and with strong governance, to have a skilled staff and the use of necessary technologies. So efficient service delivery and standardized processes. So proper regulation and supervision. So to this, the ATA in collaboration with the FCA have designed a project called Reciprocal Capacity Building, and it has come with solutions. The one is with the business areas and products and services. So we revise the existing products and we develop different products that are in need of, especially by smallholder farmers. We focus on the capacity building, on the capacity gap assessment of the Rusakos. We developed a simple automated system, an Excel sheet system, on how we assess the capacity gaps of the unions. So we track the problems accordingly, we provide technical support and other supports, to come out of these problems. The other intervention is the strategic intervention. We provide SACCOs with different capabilities. We provide training. Also, we try to, on the assessments made, we try to introduce new technologies, especially with digitalization. And we provide support in system and process developments. The other intervention in the policy and the regulatory environment, SACCOs are out of the financial system. They are not regulated by the Central Bank of Ethiopia or what you call this National Bank of Ethiopia. They are regulated by a separate institution called Federal Cooperative Agency. So this makes them disadvantaged, compared to other financial institutions. So we try to develop an appropriate policy environment on how the SACCOs should be part of the financial institution system. And the other is the monitoring and evaluation support. With this also, in addition to this, we are trying to synergize with the support of the Rabo Partnership, World Bank, ATA and FC. Especially Rabo Partnership comes with the concept of centralization of Rusako service. Actually, it was part of the Rusako capacity building, but the experience in the Rabo in the different parts of the world, especially in African countries, assists us, on how to centralize and consolidate the fragmented service of Rusakos through digitalization. So they focus also on the product and distribution. That is already, even within the framework of the Rusako capacity building project. So the centralization project of Rabo partners completely synergize with the Rusako capacity builder on the operational excellence. Already I have mentioned on the digitalization, on the organizational structure that is building towards a sustainable organizational structure to serve the SACCOs, and governance and the capitalization issue, which is a very critical area to be worked on, and on the regulatory and supervisory environment. Here, World Bank is conducting an assessment on the supervisory, on the policy and regulatory environment in this country. So on how to make them gradually part of the financial institution system. I think we would have two projects to come up, to come over the challenges and the problems. But when we see these two projects, we can say they are one and the same. And that's why we are on the process actually. We didn't finalize on the centralization of Rosako service with the Rabo partnership. Now we are developing what we call the shared service center. Currently, we have already on the process of finalizing this document. And after that, we will go finalizing the general proposal on how to deal with the centralization of service and move on piloting on one of the regions on limited unions, that's 5 unions. Then after piloting, we'll scale it up within Oromia in one region and also to other regions in the country. So here, digitalization is very critical issue to be dealt with in coming over the problems or the challenges of SACCOs. This is in brief what I would say about the projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Berhan. If I may just ask you one question. My question was about this, that you have to deal with a lot of SACCOs, over 21,000, and 80% they are quite small. You mentioned this centralized serving center and the digitization, but how about the regulations? I mean, can the central bank regulate 21,000 small financial institutions the same way that they do with the banks? I mean, what are there any thoughts about the regulation of so many SACCOs?
Well, already as I have mentioned, SACCOs are not part of the financial institution system of the country. Some of them, they call it as the semi-financial institutions. So only MFIs and banks are regulated under the Central Bank of Ethiopia, or what you call this National Bank of Ethiopia. SACCOs are regulated under FCA, Federal Cooperative Agency. So when we come even with the digitalization, when we think of transactional banking, it's very difficult, to involve SACCOs in transactional banking and introduce other payment systems. So that's why World Bank is coming into picture with the Rabo partnership to develop an appropriate policy and regulatory environment. So after developing it and validating it, then we'll present it to the authorized body, for approval on how to go about. So we are on the process of developing, on creating an appropriate enabling environment in this context. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move now to the second question for Enrique. Enrique, mirando hacia el futuro.
Enrique, looking towards the future, what are the most important channels for the distribution of financial services to the rural population by the cooperatives in Colombia? And what challenges do the CFIs face in the use of these channels? Well, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to focus in general terms on the cooperative financial system, both in cities and in the field. During the pandemics, the SACCOs in our country saw the need to streamline the process of digitalization through mobile telephones and new applications for transactions. This is the case because the new financial consumer is a completely different type of consumer. In Colombia, we have 25,000 electronic 25 million, electronic wallets. So this gives you an idea of what we have to do in the field. And there are 240 fintechs that are developing applications, particularly for digital loans. And those fintechs are competing with the cooperatives in the cities, and they are also beginning to look to do so in the rural area. Cooperatives have developed some mobile applications in several areas of the country. Basically, they have done so with the support of several international organizations. There are several enterprises or initiatives which have done so at the level of certain cooperatives. We have a mobile application for loans, which is called Agromóvil. And there are other initiatives in other marketplaces to link the farmer with the produce and connect this farmer with the consumer directly. And several cooperatives, I would say many cooperatives, have been looking at this activity, but the federation will have to join all these disparate processes so that they can be more efficient and effective. One field in which we have made progress are correspondent banks, banking correspondents, as they are known in Colombia. But cooperatives can also have these correspondent relationships, and they do so through small businesses in the townships, in the little villages, and they have a device for transactions which is connected to the cooperative. These correspondents have increased in a very interesting way, but particularly in the big cities and in the heads of the municipalities. An effort must be made so that these correspondent banking entities can go down to the level of the rural areas and the villages where the farmers are located. These mobile devices and the correspondents have done a great job in the field, but we are convinced that the farmers also have a cell phone, and that cell phone is not only to make phone calls. And this is where the SACOs have been developing all this technology, which is ready for the urban area, but we need to make it work in the field as well. There has been a great deal of progress in the area of digital correspondence. The digital correspondent entity goes down to the field, it reaches the farmer, it takes the produce and it gives the money to the farmer, and the farmer does not have to go all the way to the head of the municipality. This has had a bit of a problem because regulations in Colombia did not allow for the taking of data from the device, but it had to be done only online. And in many places, internet service is not available. Even though in Colombia, digital coverage is very good, but it's still lacking in the rural areas. Recently, there was a regulation saying that data can be taken and can be stored for 24 hours. So you can go out to a place where there is connectivity and then transmit this through the internet online. Challenges, we have to overcome resistance to change and resistance to adopt new models, electronic models or digital models for these transactions. We need to increase confidence in the cooperative model. We have to perform a better technological integration for all these different technologies in order to improve service. We need to promote digital education, not only digital education, but we have to make the farmers understand these applications and be able to use them through their cell phones. And we have to eliminate obstacles in order to have these processes, these financial inclusion processes, be more effective in the field. That is to say, we need to convince the supervisory authorities and the regulators that it is necessary to develop appropriate applications and devices for the use of the agricultural community. And in order to improve the loan and savings operations performed by the cooperatives in Colombia. This is, in general terms, a series of challenges that we have in our country. Thank you very much for your answer, Enrique. As you said before, the greatest problem is not the use of digital technologies, but the use of banking correspondence. That is where the main improvements have to be done in digital technologies. Yes, the use of correspondence has allowed us to penetrate with these digital technologies, but the correspondents are also mobile in their applications, and they use digital technology as well. So they also establish the function of correspondence through these digital applications. Correspondents give that transaction to a third party, and the third party transmits the data to the cooperative and performs the operations under their purview when it comes to money handling, etc. But they do so on behalf of the cooperative, and they do so in a digital way. But the relationship between the customer and the correspondent is a traditional one. The client and the cooperatives have a traditional relationships. The cooperatives performs all the services to the customer, but it is done through the correspondent. The service is provided by the correspondent, but the cooperative provides all the services that should be available to society nowadays. It's not only credit, but there are many other benefits for him and the community.
We have several questions. Let me pass the question for Zana. Zana, the question for you is that the regulatory environment supported the transformation of Edinvest. I mean, how do you view that? How the regulatory environment supported the transformation? And then do you see any improvements that they could come up on the regulatory environment? You can unmute. You're muted. Zana, we cannot hear you for some reason.
Okay. Now you can hear? In fact, Bank of Albania approved a regulatory framework which is the same for big and small credit unions. That means no big differences. But starting from the size of our institution, capital base, etc., we are now more preferred by Bank of Albania for other licenses. That means license for payments, etc. Okay, Bank of Albania was pro for consolidation, but it was our decision. It was not a decision of regulator.
And do you see any areas for improvement moving forward from the regulatory environment that can help you?
Yes, that means the regulatory framework is relatively new. That means we don't expect that each year to change the regulation, but we are in the good relationship and discussion with Bank of Albania, and for the moment we don't have something we discussed during this time, and we had some changes last year for the maturity of the of loans duration, for to accept that loans more than 5 years to be considered as a quasi capital, etc. We had some changes last year, and also we had payment for license for the payment.
Thank you. There is another question for you that has come, is that in the rural areas, what do you see as the advantages and the disadvantages of cooperative financial institutions vis-a-vis, let's say, commercial banks?
Cooperative financial institution, it's more easy to be organized in rural areas in a small dimension. That means cooperative institution decrease the cost of financial operation, because in rural areas in Albania, the farm is small, the distance are the distance are as always everywhere. For banks are big distance for the small loans, etc. That means financial cooperatives can reduce the cost of financial activity with the contribution of members, leaders in rural areas, etc. I think this is one of the reason. The membership participate in all decisions. That means they can have their influence for products, for services, for all the decisions that CEOs take. Sure, cooperative institutions have are not aimed are not targeting profitability. That means the capital go more slowly, and the donors cannot participate in the capital. That means even the investment we are obliged to take more time, etc. If we this is for me one of disadvantages of credit unions, credit cooperatives.
Let me follow up with another question for you. Is that, do you see competition from fintechs?
In our context, for the moment, we don't see, and we are trying to go fast ourselves. And in the future, for the moment, in the future, what we see now, what we plan, we will be in the same level as commercial banks.
Thank you. Enrique, una pregunta para ti. Mencionaste
Enrique, I have a question for you. You were talking about the high penetration of fintech in rural zones of Colombia. What are the advantages and disadvantages of fintech vis-a-vis cooperatives? As I was saying in my previous intervention, in Colombia, there's a huge development of fintech. 240 fintech companies are offering loans in Colombia. They are offering these small loans, and these low amount loans are located mostly in the urban areas, mostly providing support to very small populations. They can, and people can get a loan in 5 minutes. That is to say, they are doing away with everything that has to do with risk management because they are doing this through the information they have, but they can do it very quickly. These fintech companies, well, there are very few of them in the countryside. They are not offering them in rural areas because cities are much more attractive. But cooperatives need to bridge that gap that they are living. And what is this based on? Well, this has to do with the fact that they have very significant amounts of data. They purchase databases. They truly know what you do. They know your behavior. And they have some parameters. And in 5 minutes, they say whether you are eligible or not for a loan. And since they are dealing in small amounts, they run very little risk. The fintech companies I mentioned before, there are 2 or 3 that one of them was developed by an international organization, and they work with an entity called Finagro. This is a state entity, and they work with cooperatives. And there are others that are part of the cooperatives like Agromóvil, belonging to one of the largest companies in Colombia, which is moving towards the agricultural sector, especially working with small farmers. We cannot see fintech as the competition. What banks do is they enter into strategic alliances with these fintech companies, and they put them to work. These activities are undertaken with resources, whether their own or those of international investors. Thank you, Enrique.
We have a question for Berhan. Berhan, you mentioned that SACCOs in Ethiopia are regulated by the cooperative agency, not the central bank. And you also mentioned that this is also one of the challenges that SACCOs face. However, it is a bit hard to understand since SACCOs and cooperatives are different from commercial banks. In what sense you see problems for SACCOs to be regulated by the cooperative agency?
Thank you. First of all, we don't have, SACCOs are not considered as financial institutions. When I amend this, I think would have general cooperatives law in our country, which used for different type of cooperatives. So we didn't have a specific law for SACCOs in this country. And accordingly, most of the specialization of Federal Cooperative Agency, I can say, it's in regard to agricultural marketing cooperatives. There is no any expertise in this area. So we can think of, then it's very difficult, to be regulated under National Bank of Ethiopia, having this 21,000, 22,000 SACCOs in this country. So it needs categorization or classification, whereby the SACCOs who can fall under the regulation and SACCOs that can operate outside of regulation. So by doing this, I think we can think of creating a specialized institution. We can take the example of South Kenya, whereby they do have a specialized institution or agency to regulate SACCOs, while the Central Bank of Kenya is part of or board member of the SARSA agency. So similarly, we can think of a specialized institution, or we can think of another option, having a department under National Bank of Ethiopia. You know, under National Bank of Ethiopia, banks they do have a separate department within NB for microfinance institutions. Similarly, we can create a specialized or different departments for SACCOs in Ethiopia. Not the 21,000 SACCOs, but selected ones who have, you can take the criteria, the asset side, membership side, so those who can lie under regulation. So can be done. Or we can think of another option. That's why we are working on that. I think World Bank is working on this area on how to come with an appropriate policy or legal environment to regulate these SACCOs. Otherwise, under the existing circumstances, it will be very difficult, you know, to envisage a full-fledged financial institutions being governed by federal cooperative agency, whose main task is, you know, in promoting this different type of especially agricultural cooperatives in Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you, Berhan. I want also to remind the audience that there is a specific panel that is going to be focusing on regulations of financial cooperatives. So a lot of these questions probably they will be addressed during that panel. But I see Zana has her hand up. Zana, please go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
For the advantage and disadvantages we discussed, no? Sorry, can you repeat the question?
It was advantages and disadvantages. I think you answered it. Yes, of the cooperatives vis-a-vis the commercial banks or other financial institutions. But I think you answered that question.
Since so for the regulation in Albania.
Yes, since you have the microphone, actually, one of the questions is about the financial literacy and financial education. And you mentioned that you also have it through the mobile phones. But are there any more areas that you see that you can expand and improve the financial literacy of the members of the cooperatives?
We have done a lot for financial education during these 2-3 years because we were supported also by JICA, Japanese agency for and supporting through this support. We have produced a lot of materials for loan deposits, material to explain how to use digital channels, how to use our digital products that we offered. And also most really an important thing, it was ABBA Center. We created ABBA Center physically and online, and this center is dedicated for financial education, agriculture education, training, discussing with experts, and etc.
When you say the agriculture education is about technologies for the agriculture, not about financing, huh?
Both.
Both.
We both. We help them for to create their business plan, etc. But we offer also the new technologies and the technologies in place by best experts in this platform. And we saw that people are using it, and we see that it's really something that people need and ask. We have always discussion, question, and proposal for improvement, etc.
Thank you. Berhan, if you have any comments about the ATA's efforts on rural financial education, if you can discuss certain of the activities that you do for financial education in the rural areas.
Okay, thank you. I think regarding the financial education, would have a department what you call rural financial service here in Haiti, where Reciprocal capacity building project is part of it. So we do have a project called another what you call IVS, input voucher system. The input delivery is being done, through the Rusacos and microfinance institutions. So initially, it was designed, to channel through a structured system, which was previously highly, fragmented and not systematized. Currently, 95% and above the input voucher, the inputs are being distributed through the system. So initially it was the manual system. Now it has been developed to e-voucher. So these inputs, smallholder farmers will receive their inputs, agricultural inputs, via SACCOs, Rosacos, or microfinance institutions using this electronic system. Besides this, I think a financial education program is going on through this IVS system, whereby farmers will be educated using this community radios, television programs, and what have you. Outside of our department, that is the Rural Financial Service, ATA has got a digitalization agricultural program. I think recently they have launched a comprehensive digital financial education system, in which RFS, our team has contributed something on developing the platform. So they are providing education on the saving area, on the debt management, on the credit area, and on insurance and what have you. So different financial education programs are going on. That's why the Reciprocal capacity building project do not mainly focusing on the education, on the financial education area. But in the meantime, we develop different training modules, and we provide TOT and to the regional co-op promotion staff. So the regional co-op promotion staff in turn will provide also training to SACCO leadership at the same time. These are some of the ongoing efforts currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Berhan. Enrique, ¿puede mencionar algunas actividades?
Enrique, can you mention some of the activities performed by FECOLFIM for the financial education of customers in rural areas? Are there any initiatives in place? Yes. We are indeed organizing with the cooperatives several possibilities. We are seeing whether we can organize some training courses with the smallholders so that it can be easy for them to understand this training. these campaigns are geared towards covering all these issues having to do with money handling, because in the field, farmers say that they don't have enough money, but what's true is that they don't know how to handle money. So that type of education is very important, and not only to look at the possibility of getting a loan, but also for them to be responsible with their loans, so that people know what is their credit capacity, and this way they can repay that credit to the financial institution. But it is also important to have a great educational campaign, educational offensive, to teach them how to use these digital technologies, and have them be less fearful and less untrustful of these possibilities and virtual operations. I think that one of the elements that has been in our favor for this type of training in the rural areas has to do with the circumstance of the pandemics. The pandemics changed people, and it was a necessary change. It didn't only change the urban inhabitants, but also the rural inhabitants, because they also had the lockdown during the pandemic. They were not able to go outside, and they had to learn to use digital means. In Colombia, in 2020, when the pandemic started, 2,600,000 people used a new financial product. So that was 2.6 million people who had to learn to use the internet or something like that in order to communicate and perform transactions. And this was also the case in the rural area. And we have in mind two very important tasks. One, for them to learn to use all these digital elements, and two, savings. We have to teach people how to save, even though it might be very small amounts, because if they don't learn how to save, they won't have financial freedom. And the farmers are the ones who need it the most. And even though they have scarce resources, they have to learn how to save. So these campaigns will be geared towards financial education, and we will also include savings for that rural population. Thank you, Enrique. I'm glad that you mentioned this important issue. Many times we focus on credit, on loans, and we forget savings, which is also very important, particularly for people with scarce resources. Scarce resources. Sometimes they need savings more than credit, and that is why it is very important to underline savings.
And I want to ask the speakers, I don't see any more questions. I would like to ask the speakers if they want to have any closing statement, any last thoughts based on the discussions that we heard. You can comment on another panelist. If there is any last words that you want to mention before we close. Zana, we can start with you.
Okay. The financial cooperatives, it's to create and to manage financial cooperatives, it's not an easy work, a lot of challenges. It's the interest of all the people have to be in the same table, and but you have a lot of satisfaction, and after some years, and you see that with credit cooperatives can be really consolidated institution, and not, as we thought in the very beginning, only small institution. Credit cooperatives can be big institution with various products and services, and can see the future. We are optimistic for our choice.
Thank you, Zana. Berhan, any last thoughts about that, particularly around the vision in Ethiopia? Where do you think that will be the financial cooperatives are heading in Ethiopia?
Okay, thank you. I think first of all, we should have to consider SACCOs as part of financial institutions. To make them part of the financial institution and be competitive, I think we should have to come out of the mindset that considering them as simply as NGOs or simply for service delivery. Actually, service delivery comes with efficiency, competitiveness, and profitability. So SACCOs should be considered part of the financial institution system. Besides, they should have to get equal opportunity, to develop. Simply, they are being segregated, and they are considered as simply community-based, I can say, institutions. Rather, give them the opportunity to develop using the current technology, especially the use of digital technology in this country is very vital. Otherwise, having this very tiny and fragmented SACCOs cannot, bring, the required, change or create access, financial access to the rural part. So we should have to work on digitalization issue. And with the digitalization issue, we should have to think of creating an appropriate enabling environment on how to develop these SACCOs. If we do this, I think we do have an ample opportunity. If we strengthen and if we transform these SACCOs, there is a big opportunity, in creating a very competitive financial institutions that can serve their members. So members can get, this quality financial service from these SACCOs. Thank you.
Thank you, Berhan. Ahora pasamos a Enrique. Enrique.
Now we go to Enrique. Enrique, any last comments, observations on the role of the CFIs in rural financial inclusion? Do you have any advice to give to other countries, starting with the viewpoint of the experiences of Colombia? Yes, the first thing I would like to note is that in order to compete in a very difficult and challenging market where we have very big players, we need to have healthy cooperatives, cooperatives that are trustworthy. And these cooperatives have to have basic parameters that start with financial discipline, good corporate governance, and also the cooperatives must be geared towards making headway in the area of digitalization so as to provide good services to their members. If we produce a series of organizations with these parameters, we increase trustworthiness. And if that is the case, people will reach out to our organizations because we are having an important role in the social economy of all of the countries. We are a tool to combat poverty and inequality, and we are entities that can perform another type of economic service different from all other institutions. So we have a very important role to play in all countries in the world. So by having serious organizations, well-managed organizations with an orderly financial management without causing difficulties and with a solid base, we will be able to grow and provide services to the community that are much needed. Thank you very much, Enrique.
To spare before the end, and thank you for the panelists for great conversations and great replies, and also bringing up some very important themes around the financial sustainability of the cooperatives, the governance, the investments in technology moving forward, and the consolidation that is happening in some places, like in Albania, the very successful consolidation effort, and the role of the regulations, which are going to be discussed further in another panel. So thank you very much for all the panelists, and thank you also for the audience for a great participation and great question.